Hello and welcome to your Checkered Flag podcast review of the Mexico City Grand Prix, coming to you as usual in sound, but also for the very first time in vision. We'll see how long that lasts, but welcome along. We've just finished covering the Mexico City Grand Prix and we've got a lot to analyse after Lando Norris took a dominant win by over 30 seconds ahead of the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen's Red Bull in third. And to do that alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, is the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson and British racing driver Sam Bird. Welcome, gents. That was a good race, wasn't it? That was a really exciting one.
It kind of got better the longer it went on, didn't it? If we just forget the guy in the front anyway, because he was like untouchable from lap one, Lando Norris. But behind, there were battles closing up all the way through. There was championship battles, recovery going on. There was incident, there was drama, there was controversy. It's not always like that in Mexico City, but it certainly was this year.
It's very rare in a 71-lap race that you can say that 71 laps were genuinely exciting. There seemed like every lap there was a bit of jeopardy. Something was on the line every single time we looked at the screens, and thoroughly enjoyed that race.
I mean, it was kind of chaos, really, from lap one, turn one. We had four cars going wide, or 4 cars wide going into turn one. Max Verstappen cutting the chicane, Charles Leclerc as well. But if we start with our race winner, Lando Norris, on what was an incredibly brilliant day for him, who takes the championship lead now by just 1 point. He hasn't held it since, I think, Saudi Arabia back in April. It was a masterclass from him today.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter who leads it right now. What matters is who leads it at the checkered flag in Abu Dhabi. But what a display from him this weekend. All the way through qualifying, he looked untouchable. And again today, class of the field. He placed his car really well and cleverly into turn one. And from there on, he was not seen.
McLaren's first win in Mexico since 1989. Who won that race, Andrew?
Gerhard Berger.
I thought it was Ayrton Senna.
Oh, was it?
I think it was Ayrton Senna. Did Andrew get it wrong? Oh, no. Oh, excellent.
And we got it on TV as well.
Do you know what it is? Right. I saw a photo of Gerhard Berger doing something in a McLaren on the BBC Sport website earlier, and I just assumed that must be it.
And it stuck with you.
And then I should have thought, no, it can't possibly have been Berger, of course, because at that point, Senna was in a big championship fight with Alain Prost, of course, his teammate. But anyway, we'll part that one and forget it never happened.
Well, I won't. It was a good day, though, for McLaren on one side of the garage. We'll come on to Piastri. But for Norris, though, momentum, I know we use that word so much, but it's prevalent within sport and within motorsport, seems to be coming back to Norris's way. And I think also what's changed maybe for Lando Norris is that mentality a bit as well, really staying calm in those opening laps.
If we just stop for a second and take a step back, all the talk going into Mexico was about Max Verstappen and how dangerous he was going to be to the McLaren drivers. But also, it was almost like people had forgotten that Norris was also closing on Piastri at the same time as Verstappen was closing on both of them. If we remember, after Piastri won the Dutch Grand Prix, where Lando Norris retired with a fuel line failure, he was 34 points behind Piastri. In 5 races, he's closed that and now has a 1-point advantage. So the momentum's very much with him. He wasn't always the stronger McLaren driver through those races. In Singapore, for example, Piastri qualified ahead of him. But these 2 races in North America, Piastri's been really struggling, and Norris has stamped his authority on this championship now, and it's now he's in the position where he's got something to lose rather than Piastri.
There'll be a smile on Lando Norris's face on the flight home from Mexico, that's for sure. Tell you what, shall we hear from our race winner, Lando Norris?
I mean, just a good, clean, not too much going on kind of race, which was just what I was after, So, yeah, good pace, good start, good launch, good turn one, all those things. Just a good day, a good weekend. It's the easiest way to put it, a good weekend. So, yeah, very happy with today.
Is this the best you've felt in this car for quite some time?
It's difficult. I mean, it's the best job I did on the Saturday for quite some time, but, I need the car in order to do that. But I felt good for a little while. It's just we've not been quite as strong in certain places for a little bit of time. Here we were easily the quickest, but at the same time, I feel like the car was giving me what I want, and I could push on the car, and I knew how to push. So it's the best I felt, but doesn't mean anything for now. Every weekend's different, every track's different. So it worked here. I did the job I got to do here. But next time out, it's a completely new weekend. So
you touched on it there. You're into the championship lead, but how are you feeling about Brazil? Another different type of track.
I like it there. You never know with the weather. There's been everything in the last few years, but it's one I think in the past we've been strong at as a McLaren, yeah, I will hope and hope that we'll continue to have the pace that we had this weekend. But I got to keep up the hard work. I got to keep up the stuff I'm doing, both at the track and away. And yeah, just keep my head down.
Lando Norris then, obviously elated with that win. But Sam, there were a few boos for Norris in the Forosol Stadium section where they do a magnificent podium display. But they were quite notable for Norris.
So the fans in Mexico are super passionate. And they're great. They come out in their hundreds of thousands every year to support the sport that we love. But I thought that was pretty poor, to be honest. The guys just put on an absolute masterclass, decimated the field, won by over 30 seconds, and he gets booed. I thought that was poor. I think it's to do with there's some people who are fans of motorsport that feel like Lando might be getting preferential treatment within the McLaren family. I don't see that at all. I simply see a guy that's made a better job of it in the last 4 races, and that's it. So I think booing a guy that's just put on a masterclass was wrong.
Yeah, it's worth saying on that point, by the way, I did an interview with Zach Brown, the McLaren CEO, in Austin, and asked him about this exact point, not the booing, because we didn't know that was happening, but this idea that he was being favoured. And it refers to Hungary and Monza and all those races that we've talked about before and won't go into again. Brown says it's nonsense. It might look like he got the rub of the green, but it's just circumstance, and they're treating them absolutely fairly.
Well, either way, I don't think anything will change how Lando Norris feels about taking the win in Mexico. And with it, the championship lead. By only 1 point, though. So still very much fine margins all the way, we hope, to Abu Dhabi with just 4 races and 2 sprints left to run. Let's move on to second place, man. Charles Leclerc for Ferrari. And actually, overall, I think a good weekend, Sam, for Ferrari. Both Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton started up inside the top 3. Leclerc, though, just held on for second.
Yeah, very encouraging for Ferrari. They seem to have found a little bit of pace in Mexico. The car looked really compliant in qualifying. It looked like Charles Leclerc could place the car exactly where he wanted most of the time. There's still work to be done, and I still think that there's a lot of improvement to do. And Lewis Hamilton had a really decent qualifying, up in 3rd place, but a pretty woeful race, to be honest. But on Charles Leclerc's side, very decent job.
Well, let's hear from the man who finished in second, Charles Leclerc.
Obviously, there was the start, which wasn't a great one. Strangely, that kind of helped me because I don't think Lando would have came back to the right if I had a good start. So luckily, I could have a slipstream. But then, yeah, after that, I was just a passenger trying to defend my place. I think Lewis didn't especially knew that there was Max on the outside of me, and that created, I mean, everything was super tight. But yeah, luckily my race or Lewis's race actually didn't end up here because I really thought it would.
2 podiums in a row now, of course. That must give you a little bit more confidence heading to Brazil in these final few races of the season.
Yeah. I think we are doing a really good job at extracting every single bit out of this car. In the last 2 weekends, I don't think we've got anything to be angry about. I think we really did everything we could. The potential of the car remains the same, and we know that in the development race we stopped earlier than the others to focus on next year. But I think we are doing a really good job with what we have.
Charles Leclerc then scoring good points for Ferrari, and with that they actually move up to second in the Constructors' Championship now, which is really crucial. There's a really tight fight going on between Mercedes, Ferrari now, who go ahead of them, and Red Bull just lurking behind. But Charles Leclerc, it would have been third without the virtual safety car, Andrew?
I don't think we can be sure. So to be clear, there was a virtual safety car with 2 laps to go just as Max Verstappen had come up onto the back of Leclerc and was in DRS range and was about to attack. And it almost happened like as they were coming into the stadium section, on the lap that Verstappen would have then gone into the next lap and attacked into turn 1. So that would neutralise that battle, and it couldn't happen. And actually, Leclerc also kind of benefited a lot earlier in the race from things that were going on with Verstappen that we might talk about in a minute. There was a lot of chaos at the first corner, people going off track here, left, right and centre, and then a few laps later another incident that delayed Verstappen. Without that, I think, it all started that with Verstappen challenging Hamilton for third place behind Leclerc. If Verstappen had not, if that move had not gone the way it had, and it had all been a bit cleaner, I think probably Leclerc would have lost out to Verstappen a bit earlier. As it happened, he held on at the end. It was a well-deserved second place, but he did ride his luck a bit because of that.
Well, sometimes you need a little bit of luck, don't you, in Formula One to go your way, and it certainly did go that way for Charles Leclerc, who did a mighty one-stop strategy, actually. Verstappen then, third. Now, I feel like we have to take this in stages a bit now because it can get a bit complicated. And I think we'll go back to the beginning, shall we, Sam, and lap one. And we're going 4 abreast into turn 1. We've got Lando Norris right on the inside. We've got the 2 Ferraris sandwiched in the middle with Max Verstappen right on the outside. He locks up, runs wide, cuts the grass, and then kind of all hell breaks loose. Can you talk us through a little bit about what exactly happened and the implications of that? If you can.
There's a lot to it. The way I saw it is initially Max Verstappen made a mistake, braked far too late, locked up, ran some serious speed into turn 1 and actually narrowly avoided the wall on the far side of the circuit after the grass. And he was lucky to escape without any damage. On a second look, he's actually so far over on the left-hand side, the Ferraris have squeezed him over as they've moved over to the left in order to negotiate the right-handed turn 1, that he's now beached on the curb on the entry to turn 1, fully on the left-hand side, which has meant that the middle of the car is bouncing up and down in the middle of the curb, which means that the front tyres are not fully connected to the ground, which is why he's got no retardation, no stopping potential, and he's locked up. So maybe a miscalculation, but also he was not fully in control of the car through no fault of his own, just the Ferraris moving over on him.
So has he not gained an advantage by doing that?
Oh, he absolutely... In a way,
he got ahead of George Russell in the Mercedes, who was very aggrieved by that and kind of sets us up for the next bit.
He got ahead of Hamilton too, but he gave the place back to Hamilton and Leclerc, actually, I think.
Leclerc gave it back to Norris.
That's right. Leclerc gave it back to Norris, having cut the grass himself on the exit of turn 1. Then Verstappen gave the place back to Hamilton, but not to Russell, and Russell was very aggrieved about that. But I'm guessing the stewards must, I mean, there's a lot to talk about with the stewards as well, but I'm guessing they must have seen, I mean, Verstappen was on full opposite lot pretty much along the grass, and as Sam says, he did nearly collect the wall. So I guess they're thinking, well, he was ahead of Russell going into the corner. He's given up 2 places basically by when he's come back onto the track and ended up back in 4th. So there's only 1 place he's gained from that whole sequence of events. I guess they've kind of let him off because it's the first lap, and they take a little bit more of a lenient approach with things on the first lap, the stewards.
A few laps later, though, Sam, we're seeing Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton battling. It kind of begins at turn 1. The 2 make contact, and Verstappen, a bit rude, just sort of barges through. But then they're kind of going down the next stretch where you get the aid of DRS down towards the left-hander of turn 4. They both run deep, but Verstappen doesn't run as deep and is able to still kind of take the left-hander into the right, whereas Lewis Hamilton locks up, goes straight on. Now, there's a little sort of escape road that circles through the grass and background, which you have to take. It's in the race director's rules.
That is wide enough for a skateboard.
Exactly. You've got to be a pretty skinny Formula One car to get down there. I don't think Hamilton was able to really even get the car slowed down and get to that point. So he then cuts across the grass, slides his way back on by the time they get to turn 6. Multiple issues going on there that all get flagged by race control. And ultimately, he's given a 10-second time penalty for gaining an advantage, for cutting the track, basically. Now, was that right?
I'd love to know what advantage he gained, except maybe a couple of meters. And that's really pushing the boat out if he did gain anything. You know, he was fighting with Max. Max was looking to attack Lewis. In the end, Max has to avoid Lewis and use the grass between turn 2 and turn 3. So he's cut the corner there. Max has had to give Lewis the position back into turn 4. Lewis has run deep. He's tried to use this escape road, carried too much speed, and then use the grass. How many times during this Grand Prix did we see people running deep and using the grass into turn 1? I don't see why Lewis should get a 10-second penalty just because they've put a metre-wide strip of tarmac at turn 4-5 and yet other people can cut turn one all the time. It seems bizarre.
So there's a couple of things to split out here. First of all, the penalty was not for not using the escape road. It was for having not used the escape road, cutting across the grass and keeping the place ahead of Verstappen. And let's rewind back. Through that first corner battle, Verstappen dived down the inside of turn one. They kind of banged wheels a little bit. Hamilton went off track a little bit on the left. And then when they came back for turn two, Verstappen just completely cut the corner and got ahead. And then Hamilton comes back at him on the run to turn four. Now, it's an interesting question, Sam. Was Verstappen kind of giving Hamilton the place back there or not? It didn't look like it because they went into turn four basically side by side. Looked like Verstappen was still fighting for the position. Then Hamilton locks up, goes straight on, and then this incident that happened. Meanwhile, Verstappen, because he braked so late, which is why I don't think he was giving the place back, he then was too far into the corner at turn four, had to back right up into turn five, and that allowed Ollie Bearman, who was initially behind George Russell, who was behind Hamilton Verstappen. He watched this all happening. Russell backed off. Bearman backed off even more. He cut back into turn five and got Verstappen on the exit through turn six, and they had a kind of drag race through out of six into seven, and Bearman took that place. Now, in front of them, Hamilton, having cut the grass through turns 4 and 5, doesn't make any attempt to back off on the exit of 6, and I think that's probably why the stewards have pinged him, because he's got that. He has held that position because he's on the outside of Verstappen going into 4. He's held a position in front of Verstappen and not made any attempt to close the gap or give any kind of advantage back at all. So I think that's what it's about.
He's still with us. Everyone kept up with that. That was the carnage, really, that we were trying to deal with in the opening stages of that Mexico City Grand Prix. Ultimately, Hamilton did get slapped with a 10-second penalty, which he served at his first pit stop. Max Verstappen didn't get a penalty, but ultimately lost ground. And at one point, actually, we thought Max Verstappen was down and out. He'd fallen back down the field. He was on the medium tyre to begin with, Sam, and looking like he was on for a one-stop, and he was on for a one-stop strategy. And we thought everyone else was as well. So Verstappen really kind of turned that race around.
Well, we didn't know what strategy he would be on ultimately.
I don't think his engineer did either.
No, his engineer didn't really know what the chief strategist at Red Bull wanted to do with his car at one point in the Grand Prix. But in the end, Max Verstappen turned it around with what was a brilliant second half of the Grand Prix. When he put the soft tyres on, he came alive and he just gobbled up the ground to the back of Charles Leclerc. That Red Bull looked really strong on the soft. It didn't look particularly great on the mediums. I'm not surprised after turn 1, lap 1. I think that the front left was a little bit flat spotted and he struggled to compete with people on the soft compound in the early phase of the race.
Yeah, he did an inverted strategy. Everyone else in the top 10 who was relevant started on the soft. Verstappen started on the medium. And I think what's interesting is after that sort of first corner kerfuffle, he then came at Hamilton quite quickly and he closed on him at quite a rate. And he was obviously thinking, I can get third place here and I can go after Leclerc and maybe even Norris, who was beginning to stretch his lead at that point. But it was the attack on Hamilton that we talked about extensively just before, which was quite a late move. It was a typical Verstappen dive bomb, the sort of thing that he does. But it ended up, because of that sequence of events that we talked at, compromising him a lot. He was behind Hamilton then and behind Ollie Bearman. Now, he couldn't close on Ollie Bearman, but it's the typical thing that you get with Mexico. You get behind someone by about a second a lap. You get behind someone about a second margin. Your tyres get hot, and even if you've got a faster car and you're a faster driver, in the case of Verstappen against Bearman, you can't pass them. So you got kind of stuck there for that first stint, ran a bit longer, and then as Sam says, he was absolutely outstanding on those soft tyres in the second stint. They were the best tyres on the day, but he was closing on Leclerc so quickly. But had he not made that move on Hamilton, if he'd been a bit less Verstappen-like, if you like, and just waited maybe another lap, he might not have got into that big kerfuffle, and he might have found himself in third place rather than 7th or 8th, whatever it was at that point, and had a very different race.
Well, let's hear what the Dutchman had to say after finishing third.
Quite eventful at the beginning. We had a good start, good run to turn 1, but then, there were too many cars, so you just have to try and avoid everything, and I had to go onto the curb and you bottom. So, that was tough. I avoided going into the wall through the grass, then found my position again.
and then basically tried to just do the race. Yeah, the beginning was very hectic, but I think also very quickly we realized that the medium was not a great tire. It looked like everyone around me on the soft was quite a bit more comfortable. So yeah, we just tried to extend the medium as long as we could. And then I think when we went onto the soft and everyone else was on the medium, I think it showed that the soft was a better tire for today. And yeah, we had a good final stint. I mean, I was enjoying that. I think the pace was a little bit more competitive compared to all the cars around me, except McLaren, I would say. So that was better. I personally didn't expect to be on the podium today.
How did you view the wheel-to-wheel moment with Lewis? And also considering where you were at the start of this weekend to come away with another podium, does that give you quite a lot of hope moving forward to Brazil and the remaining races?
Yeah, I mean, the rules allow you to do the things that we do in the racing nowadays. Now, people can agree with that or not, that's the rule. And yeah, I think the whole weekend is just been quite difficult, but I think all in all to be on the podium has been positive.
Max Verstappen then on the podium, and with that closes to 36 points from the championship leader Lando Norris. It was 40 coming into this weekend. So it's still closing, Sam, but he does need to score bigger points to really keep his hopes alive if we're going to go all the way to the checkered flag in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, he needed to beat both Lando and Oscar convincingly here to really taken a larger chunk out of the championship lead. I think that this will be far more difficult now for Max. I think that it was quite telling today that Lando was the class of the field.
I'm not so sure, I don't think it's changed things that much.
I do.
Although he's lost, we can maybe have an argument about it in a minute, but he's lost ground to the championship. He's lost ground to Norris, but he's gained on the championship lead. 36 points behind. With 5 races, is it 5 races to go?
4 races,
4
2
races
sprints.
to go. Okay, so that's, what's that, for 7? Yeah, so he's still got to win every race, basically. We haven't done the maths. We should have done the maths before we started this program.
But the sprints, so the sprints are next time out in Brazil and in Qatar. Qatar is a McLaren circuit. It's not nailed down, but I can guarantee you they're going to be quick in Qatar. And if it's dry especially, they're going to be very competitive in Brazil. It's not guaranteed that Max Verstappen is going to win those sprints like normal.
No, but if we get a wet Brazil, wow.
We were just discussing this, myself
exactly.
and Andrew. If it's a wet Brazil, I know who I fancy for the race win.
Bit of Max Verstappen. What was it last year? 17th to the win in a brilliant race in Sao Paulo. Classic wet Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Okay, so Verstappen then third and still taking crucial points away in this championship fight. We mentioned Lewis Hamilton. Probably worth just touching on him because he ended up in 8th in the end with that 10-second time penalty. If that hadn't have happened, Sam, was Hamilton in with a chance for a podium today?
No, I don't think so. I think he would have been top 5 potentially. But you look at where he's finished. He's finished, I think it was 56.5 seconds off the race leader. So, okay, take off 10 seconds, 46.5, and that puts him P6-ish. That doesn't really tell the full story of the race because then after the 10-second stop and go, then he's out of position compared to where he was or could have been. However, the pace just wasn't there when he came out, or it looked like his heart wasn't fully in it the second half of the race. And the telling point for me was after Max Verstappen boxed for the softs, he came out behind Lewis Hamilton. Now, I thought Lewis Hamilton would see Max Verstappen coming and want to fight, want to at least defend and put Max Verstappen off. Just think, well, you've disrupted my race. I'll at least force you to make an overtake and slow you down a bit. But he didn't
They're
fight
also in a
Max at all.
constructors fight as well.
Didn't fight Max at all. So I think Lewis has already got both eyes fully focused on 2026.
Can he take a bit of optimism from this weekend, though, overall, Andrew? Because it was an encouraging qualifying from him and the team.
I mean, yes, but that's not out of the trend. His qualifying has been pretty strong, pretty much since the British Grand Prix. He's been had a couple of difficult races in Hungary and Belgium, but fundamentally he's been, he's not on Charles Leclerc's pace, but he's more or less on Charles Leclerc's pace in qualifying. But that margin Sam's talking about, what was it? You said it was about 16 seconds that he lost to Leclerc over the race, because Leclerc was 30 seconds behind Norris at the end. That's not far off the margin he was behind Leclerc a week ago in Austin, 13 seconds. So it's a similar sort of race pace from him. So he's still got a little bit of work to do by the looks of it.
Also, you were talking about qualifying, Harry, for Lewis, and yeah, he would be encouraged by being third on the grid. Lewis Hamilton isn't here to qualify third on the grid. Lewis Hamilton's here to win Formula One races. He wants to get back to winning ways, get on the podium for Ferrari. So when he's had a 10-second stop and go, he's going to feel crestfallen. He's going to get annoyed. And, you know, a P6 to Lewis Hamilton, it doesn't matter. It matters to Ferrari in the constructors' fight, but to him personally, I don't think it matters. He's won too many times to care about a 6th or a 7th place.
And Ferrari still going winless this season as it currently stands. Let's hear from the 7-time world champion.
It's fun at the start and didn't end up the way I'd hoped, but that's motor racing.
We heard you say over the radio just no grip at all when you were rejoining the track. I guess not much more you could have done in that situation.
No, I mean, it's very, very dirty offline, and did the best I could to keep the car or bring it back to the track safely, and that's what I could hope for.
Lewis Hamilton then, who managed to salvage a couple of points in 8th in the end. And as we said, Ferrari go up to 2nd in the constructors. Let's talk about Oscar Piastri, because I feel like it has been a roller coaster weekend, but I wouldn't say it hasn't ended with him solving all of his problems and winning the race. He's looked off colour all weekend, Sam. Qualified 8th, that became 7th with Carlos Sainz's grid penalty. But actually, the salvage operation came to play and ended up finishing in 5th spot. So does lose the championship lead, but at least there's only 1 point gap.
I think it could almost be the best thing for him this weekend. He's come away with probably the maximum amount of points that he could achieve, given his pace, given what happened in the race. He maximised himself and the circumstances around him. At the beginning of the race, if you'd said, right, you're going to get 10 points today, he would have bitten your hand off. The other thing is now, that pressure is no longer there. That pressure of leading a world championship all the way through, someone else is leading it now. Now, you've got that pressure, Lando. You're leading it with 4 races to go. And now I could take it back off you. I think that maybe the mental side transitions now.
The bigger concern for him is what happened to his pace in Austin and Mexico. Because, he had a difficult weekend in Baku. We all know that. 3 crashes and a jump start, like someone else was driving the car.
It's not great for the CV, is it?
But he qualified ahead of Norris in Singapore. Let's not forget that. It's not like Norris has been quicker than him every race since Zandvoort. Not far off, but, and it's been pretty close until Austin and Mexico, and he's been nowhere. And McLaren have been talking about this. They're saying that in these particular conditions, low grip track, hot tyres, the car demands a certain kind of driving, which Piastri has not got on top of at all. And I think it's took until yesterday in qualifying, after qualifying had finished, for him to realise, something's not going right with my driving. I have to drive in a completely different way. They haven't talked about the detail of what that is. Norris is more comfortable in those conditions. McLaren pointing out that Norris has been in Formula One for more than twice the length of time of Piastri. This is only his 3rd season, and he's maybe not experienced this sort of thing very often. What he's got to do now is go back. I mean, he might not get another race like this for the rest of the year, because each track is different, different track surfaces, different atmospheric conditions, different temperatures, and so on. But he'll want to go back to the McLaren Technology Centre in this gap now between Mexico and Brazil and work out what it is he needs to do in the car to try to make it work better in these particular conditions, because he can't afford to be having these off weekends like this. And it's been unusual, because all year he's been very strong, and I think that's what I heard a quote from him where he's talking about it's kind of doing his head in, that he's been driving the same way as he has been doing all year. It was working perfectly fine for him, and suddenly in Austin and Mexico it's not worked at all, and he's 0.3 of a second slower than his teammate. No wonder he's a bit befuddled.
You don't lead the World Championship for most of the season and then turn into an also-ran. So, yeah, he'll go back to the drawing board, watch some onboards, work with his engineers to go, right, if this scenario occurs again, how do we combat it? What do I need to do with my inputs into the car to make sure that I'm extracting the maximum out of the vehicle?
There were also some really positive moments of his race. He was a bit quiet in the first stint. You know, he was sort of settling into the race. There was a lot of DRS trains. He was kind of at the back of all of that, not making a lot of progress. He ended up stuck behind Yuki Tsunoda for a little while at the beginning of the race as well, after that little sort of kerfuffle at the first corner. But once the second stint settled down, and then it turned into a third stint because he was one of the drivers who switched to a two-stop, he did a couple of really great moves. Esteban Ocon's Haas was on old tyres, but he still was brave in overtaking it into turn 6. Esteban Ocon is not a person who takes any prisoners when he's racing, even if he's on old tyres. So that was a big risk for someone leading the championship. And then he pulled a great move on George Russell's Mercedes into the first corner. Typical, decisive, clean, clinical Piastri move to get that place that he needed. So I think overall a good recovery drive. It doesn't look much going from 7th to 5th, but overtaking is not easy at Mexico City. So I think as I said before, the driving is the key thing for him. He's still shown that he can keep his head in racing situations, race well wheel to wheel. Just got to nail these particular circumstances and come back in Brazil and see if he can get that position back.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff to take away from Piastri, but still some questions to answer ahead of a week off before Sao Paulo beckons. Let's hear from the Australian.
Yeah, it was a tricky turn one. I think the guys ahead hit the grass or hit a patch of dirt or something, and I was kind of the next car directly behind it. So when I hit it, I lost a lot of grip and kind of drifted wide and lost a couple of spots there. So that was a shame, but I think the recovery after that was pretty reasonable, just very, very difficult to overtake. So yeah, we tried our best.
Yeah, he made it up to P5, limiting the damage. Lando, of course, moving ahead in the championship standings. But what do you take from this weekend as a whole, the last few races, and a chance for a little bit of a reset now before Brazil?
Yeah, definitely. I think the last couple of races has been surprising in terms of the pace, and I think there's been we have some evidence of where the pace is and what to do, but I've got to drive the car very differently these last couple of weekends, which when it's been working well for you for the previous 18 is a little bit difficult to kind of wrap your head around, but tried a few things today, and I'll have a look if that was what we're looking for.
Oscar Piastri then, who does now drop down to second in the World Championship, but only a point splitting him and Lando Norris. We'll be hammering that home all the way till Brazil in a couple of weeks' time. Piastri was chasing down Oliver Bearman's Haas, Sam, for 4th place. I mean, at one point, Bearman was on course for a podium. He was one of the drivers that shifted to a two-stop late in the day, kind of almost responding, I think, to George Russell and Mercedes behind. But that was a career best for Oliver Bearman and a real statement, I think, as well from the rookie.
A career best for Bearman, also a team best for Haas. That's their best result in how many races now in Formula 1? 200 and...
I think we are going on to 209,
Andrew,
maybe,
must
I
know
think.
This.
It's equal best, actually.
Equal
in
best.
Lots of races, however many there have been since the start
I think
of
it's
2018 Austria.
I think it's
Romain
209.
Grosjean. Yeah, 209. 2018
from memory.
Grosjean was the last time I think they were 4th. So it was a remarkable result.
Absolutely superb. And you know what? Ollie Bearman, in his first full year, is showcasing why a big team needs to employ him in the next year or two.
Next year?
Why not? In the next year or two.
Get yourself out of that one.
No, I said year or two.
Okay.
He is very, very good.
Yeah, he's got at least a 2-year contract with Haas, but he's starting to show Ocon the way. He's out qualifying him quite consistently now that we're towards the end of the year, having had all the learning that he's had. And today was the sort of drive that marks, when young drivers come into Formula One, people are looking out for statement performances. You see it from all the ones who are going to go on to do something special. They all produce statement performances in their first season. And this was very much one of those from Bearman.
Yeah, a really good result for Bearman. He finished 4th, and with that, Haas move up to 8th in the Constructors. It might not sound like much, but they pip Sauber down to 9th, and we know the battle for 6th really in the midfield is massive for those guys. Literal tens of millions of dollars worth of prize money come the end of the year. So great result for Haas. Let's hear from the British rookie, Ollie Bearman.
It was crazy. So happy to take so many good points for the team, and we did a really fantastic job, strategically getting the car in the right window. It felt great underneath me, so perfect job.
Looked like you were really on a mission today, getting your elbows out with Max as well. We saw your dad cheering on in the garage. Just an all-round special performance.
Yeah, exactly. It's a feel-good moment. Also to go side by side with Max is a very cool feeling. He's someone I've basically grown up watching in Formula One, so it's awesome, and really proud of the job that we did today.
Seems like you've really hit your stride in the last few races in particular, so moving on to Brazil, you must be feeling pretty confident.
Definitely. We finished there on merit, even if we didn't quite have the pace to qualify there. We had the race pace to stay there, so I think we did an excellent job, and now I just want to go and see the team and give them a big hug.
Bearman then in 4th, ahead of Piastri, Antonelli and Russell 6th and 7th. We haven't actually spoken about Mercedes much. I'd call it an under-the-radar weekend, but George Russell was very much on the radio and giving his thoughts, a bit of team orders back and forth, asking to attack Bearman when they were fighting for what could have been a podium, but Russell was stuck behind Antonelli. Eventually, the order came through, but was it a bit too little too late, or were Mercedes not really in the fight today?
They weren't in the fight, really. They weren't in the conversation for a podium, to be honest. The pace wasn't there. George Russell was frustrated with Max Verstappen on lap 1. He lost ground. He lost ground again with the Hamilton, Verstappen, Bearman and himself kerfuffle at turn 4-5, and things just didn't seem to go his way. He then got stuck behind Kimi Antonelli, a lack of team orders for 6 or 7 laps, and it just didn't quite go his way.
I could see Russell's point. He's been the quicker Mercedes driver all year. He's stuck behind his teammate. They can see Bearman in front of them. They know that Bearman's car is theoretically slower, but Antonelli was making no ground on Bearman at all. Bearman was keeping him like 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds back. Why wouldn't Russell think, I'm quicker, I can have a go at beating him? The problem was they left him behind Antonelli for so long. Your tyres get hot in Mexico, and they were saying you need to cool your tyres down, and that was their argument for not letting him pass. But his argument was, well, I've only got hot tyres because I'm stuck behind my teammate. And
he had Oscar Piastri breathing down his neck.
So I think they should have made that call a lot earlier. Don't know why they didn't. It didn't. I mean, I guess it's political, maybe they thought that he wasn't going to make any grounds on Bearman, but I think he was justified in asking the question. They were not justified in waiting as long as they did. I think it would have been better. In the end, it didn't work out. Russell didn't make any ground either, and he had to give the place back. But you don't know what would have happened if they'd let him go straight away when his tyres weren't already heated up.
No, but as you say, in the end, it didn't work out. Antonelli 6th, Russell 7th ahead of Hamilton. Esteban Ocon scores points in 9th, so double points finish for Haas in the end. So really good weekend for the American outfit. And Gabriel Bortoleto snuck the final point in 10th for Sauber. We didn't really see much of him. One really quite aggressive move, I think, from the Sauber driver on Isaac Hadjar, which got him into the point. So well done, Bortoleto. Sonoda in what might have been a judgment day weekend for him, really, in his Red Bull future, Formula One future.
I think the judgment's already been made, Harry, probably.
Well, I'm just trying to give him a little bit of something. But outside of the points, whilst his teammate finishes in 3rd, is another lacklustre performance from the Japanese driver. Albon in 12th, ahead of Hadjar. Stroll was 14th. Gasly and Colapinto, the last of the classified finishers, 15th and 16th, in what's really a pretty terrible end to the year for Alpine.
Just on Tsunoda, it's exactly the sort of race that will show why he's going to get dropped by Red Bull. He was ahead of Piastri on the first lap. Piastri finishes 5th, and he finished out the points. There you go.
Point. Case made by Andrew Benson. 3 non-finishers. We didn't have, actually 4 non-finishers, because Carlos Sainz was the reason for the virtual safety car right at the very end. Fernando Alonso retired with issues along with Nico Hulkenberg, and Liam Lawson's Racing Bulls was out pretty early doors. Now, I have a feeling, well, actually, I'm not sure. If you're new to the checkered flag, we used to do driver of the day. In honour of Fernando Alonso's absolutely cracking radio messages over the Singapore Grand Prix, where he came up with hero of the race as a completely non-sarcastic term. We've adopted that one instead. So we're going for our hero of the race. Sam Bird, your hero of the Mexico City Grand Prix.
So there's a couple of contenders. Lando Norris cruising to victory. But I'm going to give it today to Ollie Bearman. I think that was a drive where kind of boy to man race, and he's certainly put himself on the radar, hasn't he?
Benny?
You probably want me to come up with something different,
No,
just for controversy's sake, but I have to give it to Bearman as well. It was outstanding. Of course, you know, Norris drove brilliantly at the front. Leclerc defended well in the Ferrari. Verstappen, great recovery, but Bearman takes it.
I think I gave Bearman hero of the race last week as well, so, or maybe even the week before in Singapore, because he's been on a run of great drives. So I think it's Bearman the clean sweep, really. A great result for the British rookie. And that just about does it for us for our Checkered Flag podcast. Thank you very much for your company. It's a week off racing, but never fear. Checkered Flag Extra is here, and we've got a great sit down with one of the bosses of the Aston Martin Formula One team. The team principal, Andy Cow, sits down with Jenny Gow for a chat all about Aston Martin and how key 2026 might well be for them, with the signings of Adrian Newey and, of course, with Fernando Alonso at the wheel once again. So a big year for that. So do make sure you're subscribed to BBC Sounds with all the push notifications turned on, so you know exactly when a new episode of the Checkered Flag drops. And we'll be back for a full weekend's worth of coverage in a couple of weeks' time for all things Brazil, the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, and the penultimate of the sprint races. Thank you very much for your company. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.